The novel Truth Marathon, a module in the mega-novel Plastic Millennium, is, in equal measure, a family drama, social novel, and love story. However, at its heart are two important historical questions. Did Franklin D. Roosevelt have foreknowledge of Pearl Harbor? Did Harry Truman have foreknowledge of North Korea's invasion of South Korea in June 1950? What follows are not the allegations of conspiracy buffs, but what is accepted as part of the historical record. The governments of both Roosevelt and Truman had very capable intelligence warning them of potential hostilities. In the case of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. had a ring of listening posts close to Japan. It had broken Japanese diplomatic codes. It had a policy of requiring military commanders to, quote, accept the first blow, unquote, in the expected event of hostilities. For an interesting example of how this policy played out, look carefully at what happened the day of December the 7th, 1941, not in Hawaii, but in the Philippines, under General Douglas MacArthur. Despite being warned 7 hours in advance of an attack, he failed to get his planes off the ground. In the case of Pearl Harbor, the event that gives global context to what was happening was World War II. Roosevelt was desperate to enter, but political support for American involvement in Europe and Asia's wars wasn't there. Pearl Harbor galvanized the American people overnight. Similarly, in the spring of 1950, U.S. intelligence knew for a fact that the North Koreans were arming heavily. Shipments of materiel flowing from the Soviet Union were monitored by U.S. subs outside Soviet ports. The buildup of a North Korean Air Force was monitored by American overflights and in-country agents. The border between North and South Korea at that point was very permeable. Yet, despite this massive buildup of military power in the North during the early months of 1950, de facto U.S. military assistance to South Korea slowed to a trickle. And the State Department pressured the South Koreans to reduce governmental, including military, spending. When the South Koreans protested, they were stonewalled with claims the South Koreans had to balance their budget and that the American government couldn't afford to spend more. Again, global context throws a different light on what was happening on the Korean Peninsula in early 1950. In 1949, the Soviets had successfully tested an atom bomb. Later the same year, the Chinese successfully concluded their revolution, with the exception of Formosa. In reaction to these events, during the first months of 1950, the Truman administration secretly developed a policy to quadruple defense spending. But the American public, recently having emerged from World War II, was eager for a reduction in military spending, not an increase in it. That changed overnight on June the 25th, 1950, when North Korea successfully invaded the South. One major theme of Truth Marathon is that history matters. It matters when it occurs as a quote-unquote current event, and it matters decades after the fact, when records remain sealed. It's worth noting that the Russians have revealed more state secrets pertaining to the Korean War than the U.S. government has.